Greetings and humble bows. So what we're doing is just discussing non-duality. Non-duality talks happen. They continue to appear to happen in the apparent appearance of a time frame that is recognized as the presence, as now, infinitude of nowness. All that is, it simply is always now. Always present, ever presence, extreme nowness. That is a feeble attempt to describe the manner by which all that this appears. All that is, it simply is everything and nothing, simultaneously real and unreal, appears as a reality frame that is happening now. And all that is did not happen in the past, and it will not happen in the future. All that is that's appearing as this appears in ever-presence, appears in now. There will only always be beingness and oneness with all that is in now. But this is also impossible because non-duality is pointing to something that's completely and entirely unknowable. It is also unspeakable, and yet non-duality speech happens. Are there non-duality speakers? Yes, they happen. But non-duality speakers are speaking from self, that is the collective consciousness of all that is. The collective consciousness of all that is speaks of non-duality. And yet there are no non-duality teachers. Because non-duality is not a teaching. The manner by which non-duality is represented in all that is as an apparent appearance is indescribable. It's illogical. It's unbelievable. It will never be comprehensible or understood by a me. A me will never be able to comprehend or even recognize or notice the glimpse of how all that is appears as an apparent appearance of everything and nothing happening, both real and unreal, simultaneously. Basically, what's being uncovered here is that there is an experience of seeking that which cannot be sought. Yet seeking happens. Seeking especially happens with a me. Because the seeker is always with a me while it is separated. While there is a sense of separation, there is a me and a seeker and a witness. While there is a sense of separation of self, those three parts of self appear to be happening. Each of those parts of the self, as they are separating, branch off. They branch off into a seeker and a witness. And then there's the me. The me in that separation of self, that sense of separation of self, will believe that without a seeker and without the witness observing the activity of the seeker and the me as they communicate about seeking knowledge, seeking information about all of this in separateness, as though it can become an individual as that sense of separation is happening to the me. The me is trying to justify that it knows the unknowable, that the me can apprehend a knowing of all that simply is, of all of this, of all that is. Basically, what's being uncovered here is that there appears to be, or there seems to be, an experience of seeking happening, which is the experience of something missing. That can be said that it could be construed as a motivation for seeking. But what motivates the me to send off a part of self as a me and a seeker is that the me wants to justify that in its separateness it is a unique individual. That it is a unique individual. It's personal, it's individualized, it's unlike any other me. That's what the me does with the seeker, to send out the seeker to find information that separateness is okay and that the me will get by with separateness from self, the sense of separation from self. That the me will get by with that. No, well, that's what it's hoping. It's hopeless, though. The me doesn't know that, but it sends out the seeker anyway. Even though, although the me does not realize, because it lost self-realization along the way. How did the me lose it? Self-realization? The me lost self-realization when it did that. When it separated from all of this, from all that is, from all that simply is. When the self separated from that and became involved with all the other me's, when it seemingly was born into reality and it was tricked. It's trickery. It was tricked into convincing itself. When I say itself, me branched off from all of this. It kind of branched off, not necessarily branched off from all of this. It made an appearance. The self is the collective consciousness of all that is. That's not understood by a mind. It's not understood as a mental concept. It is not definitely not understood by a me. Because there is still partial liberation happening, and there is a seemingly apparent appearance of embodiment. And so, as a result of that, there is partial liberation. You know, my story, all right? Richard Trevino's story, Richard Ty Trevino's story, began upon giving a birth name. My birth name that was given was Richard Trevino. I added the Ty because the me was getting to that point before it collapsed and died and fell away and dissipated. The me that became Richard Ty Trevino thought that, oh wow, I'm on a path, I'm on a road to somewhere. When in fact, all along when I say I, the me that was Richard Trevino, Richard Ty Trevino, that is, Ty Wanderer. That me, and the story of that me, believed that it was on a road to somewhere, when that me was on a road to nowhere. A path to nowhere. Now that the me has fallen away, dissipated, and it died, then it left the seeker exposed. Then as the seeker was exposed, the seeker that was part of that me was a representation of that me saying, uh-oh, I've been had now. Because it has now revealed all that is appeared as a recognition to the seeker. And then the seeker at that very split moment, split second, you just call it a moment. I mean, it just happened with a seeker. The seeker went, whoa! All that is, it simply is everything and nothing, both real and unreal simultaneously. Doesn't need to be sought. So why am I seeking? Why did I bother to become a seeker for the me in the first place? So the seeker said, you know what? That's it. I'm gone. No use for me anymore. So the motivation was lost for the seeker to continue making an appearance, and the seeker gave up and said, you know, the me's not around anymore, so I'm out of here too. So the seeker, just as the me fell away and collapsed and died, then the seeker fell away, collapsed and died as well. Now, there was that three-way split I had mentioned in a previous discussion that we've had, previous presentation here on my channel, my YouTube channel, and what was mentioned there, what was spoken of, in non-duality as a non-duality speech. What was given, it was provided a satsang, a satsang, a discussion, a chat, a talk that is being shared. That third component, that third part of that separation of self, after the me falls away, dies, dissipates, is gone, collapses. Then the seeker collapses, dies, falls away, dissipates, and is gone. Then the last, final part of self that once separated is the witness. And the witness was always there with the me and the seeker all along. And yet, the witness will still continue to do what? Witness. A witness is witnessing. Just as a seeker was seeking, and just as a me was making every effort to say that the me mattered and that the me was going to find the answer to everything, that the me was going to find an answer to all that is, that simply is everything and nothing simultaneously, real and unreal, that the me was going to find an answer to that. That's why it sent out the seeker to look for that information, but never found it. So what happened? It collapsed. It's gone. Died. Fell away. Then the seeker knew it was doomed too. At that point, and you know what? I don't need to be around either. So that seeker collapsed, fell away, died. Then there's the witness. Now the witness will continue to witness all that simply is. Everything and nothing appearing as both real and unreal simultaneously. That continues. It does. And yet it will continue in a very subtle way while there is the apparent appearance of embodiment. There is the apparent appearance of embodiment since there is a sensation of embodiment to some degree. If a device is used, or if the witnesser, not witnesser, or the witnessing that's happening by the witness, that is associated still with embodiment. The embodiment is bodying. What happens? Embodiment is embodying. It's just like a shell. It's like a vehicle. It's likened to the metaphor of using a metaphor similarly as an explanation of embodiment. It's like a car. It's like a vehicle that the body goes into a car to do what? To travel. Well, embodiment is the vehicle by which the witness is witnessing not only the reunification back to self with partial liberation with all of this, all that is, and oneness, then that final step after partial liberation is the apparent appearance of embodiment no longer bodying. That is the final step towards what? Not partial liberation, but absolute liberation. Is it an attainment? No. Is it something to reach for? No. Absolute liberation simply happens without the apparent appearance of embodiment, without the body bodying. Without the body embodying and speech of non-duality and of all of this and all that is, without that speech of non-duality happening. Absolute liberation is not evidential to embodiment because embodiment was partially liberated, not absolutely liberated. Therefore, evidence that is what happens is not spoken of. It simply is not spoken of because there is no longer embodiment, and embodiment has fallen away. The apparent appearance of embodiment is no longer there. So the final stage in liberation, after partial liberation and before absolute liberation, is self-realized. There is no longer speech about non-duality. The non-duality that is associated with all that is, it simply is everything and nothing appearing, making an appearance simultaneously as real and unreal. There's no longer partial liberation in that. Then, all the witnessing of embodiment, speaking of non-duality and speaking about all that is and all that this is, when the witness has fallen away and died and dissipated and collapsed, and the embodiment is no longer making an appearance. I don't really mean making an appearance, because embodiment does not make anything. It's simply the apparent appearance of bodying of the embodiment. The body that made the apparent appearance of speaking, just as speech of non-duality happens. And yet, the witness will eventually appear to fall away, to collapse with the self. And once that happens, the partial liberation becomes absolute liberation with all that is. It's no longer evidential via embodiment. And then self is one with all that is. Absolutely. But for now, while there is embodiment and while there is non-duality speech regarding all that is, it simply is, everything and nothing, simultaneously real and unreal, while embodiment is speaking about all this, about all that simply is, all that is, it simply is, everything and nothing, both real and unreal simultaneously. Unconditional love, perfection, wholeness, completeness. Embodiment in partial liberation will continue to speak. On behalf of all that is? No, not on behalf. Then why, one may ask, is there partial liberation, and why is there just a witness left and not any other component of self? Once the collapse, once the return from separation happens to self, what next? There is no what next. There's simply witnessing happening. Witnessing of what? Witnessing of all of this. All that is. While still bodying and speaking of all that is via non-duality speech. So the story of the me, upon given a birth name, indoctrination then began with a story, and the character of a me with a birth name began to carry on by developing all the seemingly apparent characteristics that are associated with a personality, as though there was a one-of-a-kind individual that was expressing that me. This is one of several ways that the separation from self happens. Individuality is then expressed by a me. As the me story develops, the individualized me then branches off into two other parts. Those two other parts are the seeker and the witness. The seeker spends all the me's time that the me's embodiment has been allotted according to the apparent appearance of time as it is recorded in some way, or simply becomes involved in an entirely different reality frame that is entirely different compared to a physical matter reality of manifestation that supports embodiment. A historical database that is accessible by a me whom did not fall away, collapse, or die may return to this physical matter reality and seemingly begin to restart an entirely new story that is associated with reincarnation, by the way. That is the reincarnation process. Another me, another apparent appearance of being born, and then the exercise about the first 2 years being placed in front of a mirror with a red dot on the forehead, and then going like this, trying to rub the spot off of the mirror. First 2 years. Then after 2 years have gone, time seemingly goes by. The baby infant develops and does what? Oh, this is my hand. Okay, it's my hand. I cry. Then food comes to me. Then I'm happy again. But then I feel discomfort. I feel pain in what I believe that I have this body of mind, embodiment. So there's a process of what? Gradual separation. Gradual separation. Does that process have to happen? Yes, it does. Is it happening for anyone or no one? Well, for a time it's happening to a me, as a me is being developed there. A me is developing there. And all the while, the witness is witnessing that happening. Which the witness, by the way, is self. The witness is a representation of self that is intact during what appears to be an apparent appearance of time happening and the apparent appearance of being born into a reality. Into reality. Into this seemingly apparent appearance of a reality frame, which is a physical matter reality. Now, when that individualized me begins to branch off into two other parts, after that time which the baby is no longer going to the mirror with that red dot, now the red dot is self-acknowledged by the birthing of a me. There's a new me now. Okay? It's been reincarnated as a new me. What's been reincarnated? Self. Self reincarnated into all of this to make another apparent appearance. To do what? Not to do anything. It could be said that all it is simply entertaining. Entertaining what? Entertaining all that is. And how does that happen? Well, all the me's, the process of me's springing up. 8 billion of them. If we are referred to countenance or numbers here. 7 billion, 8 billion, 9 billion, 10 billion. Does it really matter how many me's will appear to manifest and then separate? That's just part of what's happening. It's part of all that is. That makes an appearance to happen. Makes an appearance? Well, the appearance of that happening. Of me's being seemingly born into a reality frame. That have separated from self. separated from the oneness of all that is, which is a collective of self-consciousness. Self-consciousness of all that is, when it separates into me's, to all these different little parts which are me's of the self. The self that is one with all that is. Now those parts that branch off from a me are the seeker and the witness. Now the seeker spends all of the me's seemingly apparent appearance of time, the succession of events of the threefold principle of past, present, now, which really matters, always has mattered, and is part of the matter, and part of the illusion, and part of everything and all that is. There's now, now. Infinitude moments of now. That's why presence, ever presence of all that is nowness. There's no past, there's no future. There's only the complete, whole, non-linear time as nowness, now. The mind, while it is operating with embodiment as the body is bodying and mind is minding, the mind of the body never comprehends that. Never comprehends what? Never comprehends that it is part of partial liberation of the self. Cannot know that. That's unknowable. It's unknowable to the mind. It's mindful of what? It's mindful that there is a witness that's witnessing and that has witnessed that separation of self and the me falling away, seeker falling away, the witness is left with self via embodiment, which is partial liberation, which is why that is not absolute liberation. Now, getting back to that process. The seeker spends all of the me's time that the me's embodiment has been allotted according to the apparent appearance of time that is linear, is seemingly apparently linear, as a recording, or simply becoming involved, as the me may become involved in an entirely different reality frame that is entirely different compared to this physical, the apparent appearance of a physical matter reality that supports embodiment. A historical database that is accessible by a me, whom did not fall away, collapse, or die, will return to this physical matter reality as reincarnation, as a seemingly apparent appearance of being reborn, and begin to restart an entirely new story until the me has fallen away, dissipated, died, collapsed, while it has the apparent appearance of embodiment intact. The ability of a me to apprehend memories is how the me accesses without recognizing that they are not a separate individual whom has been with all that simply is all along. You see, the seeker will embark on missions to make every effort of reporting back to the me while that separation, a sense of separation itself is happening, okay, with information regarding how and why the me separated from self in the first place. The seeker always gathers and collects information for the me so that the me can say he or she has gained a degree of knowledge regarding what is simply all this, but simply is all that is. If the me happens to fall away, collapse, dissipate, while still seemingly within an embodiment, this particular me, you can put a birth name there, by the way. Insert birth name there. Self embodies all that simply is as a collective consciousness that is absolute liberation with and without the apparent appearance of embodiment. Eventually, that me, insert your birth name there if you're still representing self as a me, will recognize that their me has collapsed, fallen away, died, and now there is self-recognition that there is partial liberation happening, not absolute liberation. With all that simply is, everything and nothing simultaneously real and unreal, as, insert birth name right there again, with a me, doing something. Everything and nothing is dreaming that it is, insert the birth name of the me there again, doing something. What the me, or that birth name of the me, thinks they're doing something next, well, that's simply being done. The me is being dreamt because this is all there is. In the isness, there is aliveness. All that simply is happening for nobody, for no reason, and for no purpose. It is simply what is happening. Self-inquiry can provide a witness with connectivity to the collective consciousness that is self after partial liberation, but only after partial liberation. There is partial liberation in embodiment. Absolute liberation happens once there is no longer an embodiment that had been supporting and enacting upon partial liberation. Absolute liberation happens while the witness remains in partial liberation until the witness collapses and there is no longer the apparent appearance of embodiment. That's the final stage. Non-duality speech will continue to be spoken of and will seemingly apparently appear and increase with appearances. Now that what has happened, the increase of the collapses and deaths of me's and collapses and deaths of seekers, there will now be a multitude of the apparent appearance of awakenings and enlightenment of witnesses. Witnessing. Of the witness witnessing witnesses happening via non-duality speech. Non-duality speech is that. That which religious speakers spoke of as truth unveiled. That which religious speech has spoken of as the new age dawning. The new age of the apparent appearance of a planet filled with me's going about bodying, me's going about doing what me's do collectively. and solo. There's organizations, there's groups of me's organizing, and they call themselves the group of me's, have different organizations throughout the apparent appearance of a planet, filled with a bunch of me's organizing in different ways. One way they organize is through religions. The Muslims, get the Christians, you have the so many. You have the Mormons, you have the Protestants, you have the Seventh-day Adventists, you have the, just goes on and on. There's a list, all right? There's a list of groups of me's that are expressing with religious speech and religious thought that's not what's happening with non-duality, though. No. Is non-duality the latest fad, the latest thing? No, it's not even that either. It's more than that. A lot greater. It's associated with an awakening. It's associated with enlightenment. Associated with that. And yet, can the self say that they are enlightened? No. The self cannot say they're enlightened or awakened. It is simply what happens. It happens after the me has fallen away and died and dissipated, and after the seeker has fallen away and died and dissipated. Then they are no longer interfering. There's no longer that veil there. The interference, the obstructions of all the activity of the me and all the activity of the seeker. It's out of the way. Now there's the witness. Now that sense of separation of self is no longer there. It is as close as returning to intact self with all that is, and the oneness is there. While there's partial liberation with embodiment, okay, there's witnessing happening. Witnessing all that is. And there's appreciation in that. There is appreciation by the self, witnessing via the witness, via partial liberation, via embodiment, the apparent appearance of embodiment, bodying. As non-duality speech will express in that manner. Now, self embodies all that simply is as a collective consciousness. There is absolute liberation with and without the apparent appearance of embodiment. Now, can it be said to go too far in non-duality speech? There's no such thing as too far. That implies that there is limitation. That implies that there are parameters to all that is. There are no parameters. All that is simply is, it's infinitude. It's endless, it's boundless. Although indescribable, all that is can still be pointed to by the witness, witnessing all of this. Witnessing everything and nothing appearing as everything and nothing real, both real and unreal simultaneously. The nowness, the ever-presence, the apparent appearance of now. That's where the self and the witness reside. The ever-presence of now. Now, the nowness. That is where self with the witness resides. In partial liberation with embodiment. Namaste.